Go.
When you're ready. Good evening. Today is Monday, November 19th, 2018, and this is the start of the Hanson Board of Selectmen meeting. This meeting is being televised by Whitman Hanson Cable Access. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Take it away, Matt.
All right, good evening, Hanson. Here are this week's announcement. All town offices will be closed on Thursday and Friday, November 22nd and 23rd for Thanksgiving holiday. The transfer station will be open on regular hours on Friday. Please plan your business accordingly. Volunteers are needed on the following committees: the 200th Anniversary, Capital Improvement, Cultural Council, Economic Development, Elder Affairs, Finance, Historic Commission, Memorial Day Patriot Observance, Memorial Field Trustees, Recreation Commission, and Zoning Board Alternate. Applications for appointment and information on the committees are available at the town website, hanson-ma.gov. Vacancies are open on the following boards: the Board of Health and 2 members on the Hanson Housing Authority. Applications for appointment and information on the committees are available on the town website at hanson-ma.gov. Also, with the holidays coming up, the Hanson Food Pantry will need some help. I didn't realize this, but they serve over 3,600 people just here in the town of Hanson. 3,600 people.
Long period of time, Matt.
And they've been doing a great job. They already delivered 93 turkeys to families here in the town of Hanson. So for everyone listening, please drop off some canned goods or donation to the Hanson Food Pantry. And some upcoming meetings. The Hanson Selectmen will be meeting on Tuesday, November 22nd, December 11th, December 18th, all at 7 p.m. here at the Selectmen Meeting Room.
Okay, thanks, Matt. So, new business. We have our first legal counsel interview, and that's with Mead, Talaman, and Costa. So, Kate, do you want to introduce your friends and take it away?
Sure. So I'm Kate Federoff. We've met. And this is Brian Winter, and
Hello,
this is
everyone.
Lisa
Good
Mead. Lisa is one of the partners in the firm, and she can give a brief overview of what we propose to you this evening.
Thank you for having me, and let me also say that Jay Tallerman, who you all know very well, passes on his regards. He's with his ailing in-laws in New Jersey, so he'd rather be here, I'm sure. And it's great to be back to Hanson. I've not been down in a while. As you know, our firm is made up of 10 attorneys. We represent about 12.5 communities in Massachusetts as town council. We have offices in Millis and in Newburyport so that we better service our communities in those regions. I formed the firm in 2004 with a couple of other partners, and we did it based upon the reason that we wanted to provide a new kind of legal services to a community. So we wanted to put counsel back in the town council title. That is, that we would be accessible and be a partner with you in the decisions that you make so that we could give you guidance, tell you what your pros and cons were, and let you make the business decision that you wanted, but not just to somebody to be there and say, yes, you can do this, or no, you can't do this, but to give you options. And so I think that that's how we try to deliver our services. You've had a lot of experience with Kate and Jay, for sure. I more in the past had more experience on your contracts and procurement, which is where I tend to focus my work. But I think that our goal is to be available to you and to really prosecute those things that you want to prosecute and give you the advice that you want when you need it. And so I'm going to turn it over to Kate to talk about some of the items that she takes care of.
Yeah, so I hope that we've been responsive to you in the past and will continue to do so. And I myself have been working with Bob Curran very closely on a couple of enforcement action, as well as you all on enforcement action, most recently for JJ's Pub. Furthermore, we like to take, as Lisa said, a proactive approach by doing trainings. We just had a training a month or so ago with this board, and I think it went pretty well. And then following that training, I worked with the planning board, and we had a training with them as well to talk about not only training issues, but open meeting law and public records and compliance. So We like to address problems before they become problems and have solutions, and multiple solutions so that you can choose from them. And I hope that we've been working well with your town administrator, Mike. He and I have an open door communication system. In addition to the general counsel work, we also provide labor services, labor and employment services. I do that primarily for the firm, and we've put that in as part of our proposal. That would be also on the hourly fee. If you were so inclined to stay with the hourly fee, we also have a flat fee proposal in there if you were interested in pursuing that. But labor is always on an hourly basis. So because you're not familiar with me and my practice in that area, I'll give you a little history. I worked with the city of Brockton, and I was the lead on the negotiation team for all our unions, so public safety. So we had 3 public safety unions, the patrolmen, supervisors, and fire. And then we had other unions like clerks, city employees, Beatty, which are your engineers, technicians, and several others. So I did that for the city of Brockton, as well as all your employment claims. So your MCAD complaints, your internal employment investigations, so if there's a harassment claim or something like that that's falling outside of labor, I handle that for the city, and I've transitioned that to this practice as well. So right now we have Uxbridge, Berkeley, Deerfield, Townsend, all of whom, and I think a few others, Maynard, all of whom use our firm as labor for labor services as well. And it's been successful. And with towns, it's sometimes a little less, on the collective bargaining side, a little less interactive depending upon what your needs are. You might have a strong town administrator who handles all the negotiations and then calls us in to review language, or we can sit at the table. So I'm comfortable doing both. And I'm not sure when your contracts expire, but
About a year and a half or so.
in about a year and a half. So that service is available to you as well. But I hope that you choose our firm, and I'll turn it over to Brian, who's recently been working with the planning board on several cases, and he's our land use expert, new to our firm, formerly of KP Law.
Well, thank you, Kate. And again, good evening, everyone. My name is Brian Winter. Thank you for this opportunity to be here tonight. I think out of all the members of the team, I might be the newest face to all of you. So with your permission, I'd like to just say a little bit about my background and then talk about some of the work that I've been doing for Hanson of late. So I'm more of a recent addition to Mead, Tallerman, and Costa, not to the practice of municipal law, but to Mead, Tallerman, and Costa. I started at a small group in Attleboro working with the city solicitor and also the town council from Mansfield. I spent a number of years working with that gentleman. His name was Bob Mangiarotti. He also had a group with a retired Superior Court judge, as well as a state rep, and that was my sort of introduction into municipal law. After that, I worked for a larger firm in Boston that did exclusively municipal law, and I worked for about 1/3 of the cities and towns in Massachusetts during that time. And that's where I really converted my practice from something that included municipal law to something that was exclusively devoted to municipal law. And in that context, I started to specialize in land use areas and also some environmental areas, as well as the permitting side, meaning what happens in town hall to what happens after town hall, the litigation side, the administrative appeals side, the state components, the other components of a lot of land use developments projects, and where some of these things ultimately get adjudicated after they leave the boards here. During that time, and continuing on to my time at Mead, Tallerman, and Costa, I've worked with just about every kind of land use issue and land use board you could think of, from the traditional zoning board, planning board, conservation, board of health matters that probably everyone's familiar with, that would include subdivision approvals, zoning approvals, wetlands approvals, those sort of reviews, but also to give you the outer edge of some of that spectrum, harbor masters, shellfish constables, I've even appeared probably more times than anyone else before the Elevator Appeals Board, which I didn't even know existed until I had several appeals in a row there. And now I'm very familiar with that. So these sort of issues in terms of code enforcement, code compliance, zoning enforcement, zoning compliance, they come in many different shapes, sizes, forms, and contexts, and I've really seen quite a bit of that. So that brings me to some of the things that I've been doing here of late, and some of the things that I could perhaps be doing in the future for you. I got involved, I think, a few months ago with a solar project. And started to work with the zoning board in that context, and now the planning board and some of your staff and personnel. There's also been some other things that have come up during that period and sort of independently in that period, and I've been working with your building commissioner, Bob, on some newer issues that have come up more recently in the past couple of weeks. And I've started to forge, I would say, new relationships, but also I have worked for Hanson before in the past, so I guess renewed relationships might be a better word for it. And one of the things that I think, even prior to my involvement in Hanson with Mead, Talman, and Costa, that's become very evident to me now as part of this team, is that there's a relationship built with all the attorneys in our firm and everyone they work with in this town, and that they not only know each other, we know very well on different levels professionally, of course, but there's an open channel of communication, and that's always persistent in that relationship. So everyone knows who to call, they know how to reach them. And two really important components in my practice, and it's one of the reasons why I joined this firm, is the manner in which services are delivered really have two key components that I think Mead, Talman, and Costa do very, very well. And that's the accessibility component. You always know who you're gonna call. You always know how to reach that person. There's always that communication. But the other half, equally as important, is the responsiveness. It's not just, did I leave a message, they'll get back to me eventually, but how soon does someone return that phone call, return that email, and how soon do they provide information in response to your question that's actually actionable? How quickly can we provide substantive information that moves your project or your task along? And I've seen that this firm does it very, very well. I think we've been doing it very, very well, particularly in the case that I've been working on. I think we've had a very good, functioning, productive relationship at each stage of the way. And I think it's a very important part, because obviously your world and the work that you do goes 24/7, and things come up at random times. And we can be there right with you when those things happen, so that the projects can move along productively, smoothly, and with little or with few obstacles and interruptions possible.
So I'll just wrap it up. So one of the comments that Selectman Bloss commented earlier is that Jay is your lead attorney, and I'm listed on our proposal as the second lead attorney. And the reason that we do that is we always have two partners on every account. And then, of course, you have the people who are the lead attorney, and then our colleagues that provide most of the services to you that you know. So I'm there second, and that is that if Jay is never available and you need somebody right away that can make certain decisions that maybe others can't, you can always reach me. And it doesn't matter, where we are in the state, we're always accessible. That goes back to my time as an elected official myself. That I thought that was always important from my city solicitor at the time. I was a city solicitor in the city of Somerville, and I thought that was important to deliver those services to those elected officials. And we've prided ourselves on that also as we started our firm in 2004, and when Jay joined me shortly thereafter. So we hope that we continue those services for the town of Hanson. We enjoy working with all of you, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay. I'll go first. So we have an intermunicipal agreement with East Bridgewater, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So if you represented East Bridgewater and you also represented the town of Hanson, and there was an issue with that municipal agreement, how would you handle that?
Well, we don't represent East Bridgewater, thank goodness.
No.
But we would have to step out. It would be a conflict. We could not represent either one of the communities in that instance, because we would not be able to, as attorneys, be an advocate for one or the other and in the most beneficial way to whoever our client was. And so we would have to step out and recommend that you get separate counsel.
Right, okay, excellent. And the second question is, so if you were me and you had to interview 5 different firms for a potential general counsel and labor counsel for the town of Hanson, what is it that you would look for in your next possible firm?
Responsiveness, competency, and quite honestly, the way you work with people, what your references say about how you work with your clients. That would be my response.
Yeah, and I would second that if I may jump in on this one. Certainly, the responsiveness and the substantive responsiveness that you get. One, I think a big asset for this firm is that when you are making the phone calls and you are interacting with your primary and secondary contact, you're getting someone with years and years of municipal experience and exclusive municipal experience who's going to be able to answer that question. So you're very, very unlikely to get the kind of response that is, we'll look into that, we're going to get back to you hopefully in a couple of weeks. You're going to get something that you can actually use sooner rather than later. And to echo the second point you made, really the truth of the matter is in what other clients say. And you're going to find that we have these relationships with other clients. I hope and I believe very strongly that you'll hear the same thing from them, which is, I enjoy working with Mead, Talon and Costa. We have a great working relationship. They are very responsive, they're very accessible, and they're there when we need them. I think that's where you're going to find the proof of what you hear from each one of your applicants. It's easy enough for, of course, us to sit here and say these things. But when you check those references, when you speak to other clients, people we've worked with now and in the past, you'll hear it from them.
And I'm going to add one more thing to that, and that's creative problem solving. And that goes back to listening to what you have to say, being involved in what you do, and being able to give you advice on what your options are rather than telling you exactly how you need to move forward. So if you say, I want to do X, I don't just say, no, you can't do that. I want to say, okay, well, how do we get there? How do we get closest to there? And what is our creative problem solving in getting there? So one of the things, I happen to teach a class for Suffolk on municipal law, and it is for municipal managers. And we talk a lot about, don't just say no and go away just because, the statute says no or somebody else tried it and they said no. Let's figure out a way to make what you want to get done. And so I think creative problem solving is very important as well.
Excellent. When we start to my right, Mr. Hickey.
Thanks for coming. I have a couple of questions, and I kind of separated this, and you have general and labor.
Right.
Would you be opposed to just getting one or the other?
Well, we provide general counsel services now.
Oh,
Yeah.
and right.
And we do, so there's some communities we provide both, some communities we just provide general counsel
Okay,
services.
because Kate, my question is actually to you. When I
Sure.
first became a selectman, I saw Jay once or twice, maybe 3 times. And then there seemed to be a transaction where you took over, and probably for the last year and a half, you've come to our meetings, you've come to the town meetings.
Yeah.
Yet it says on my paper that you're the backup.
Yeah.
Yet it seems to me that you're the lead for the town of Hanson.
Well, I hope that's a good thing.
And I'll tell you the
Right.
truth, Kate, when you and I first met,
Yeah.
you're very easy to talk to,
Yeah.
and I believe you know your stuff.
Thank you.
But I didn't even notice the transaction, but I thought you were our lead counsel.
Right.
Yeah, so I think I have been doing a lot more work in Hanson because everyone's been comfortable. And so I know that Mike has worked very closely with Jay on a couple of things in the background, but I have been appearing more and more on behalf of the firm. And if that's okay, if that's acceptable to you, we'd
Yeah.
probably continue that down that path. And we always pull in different people with different expertise when the need arises. So for example, Brian handled that planning board matter, which was really helpful. And Mike, although I do litigation, Mike does larger litigation. So although I've been doing enforcement with Bob, Mike may take on a more leadership role in a bigger piece of litigation.
Mike Kennefic.
Mike
You
Kennefic,
might not
so
have met him.
you've
Yeah.
met Mike
Yeah,
before.
yeah,
yeah.
He had a pretty big case for you I think it was last year.
Yeah.
Right, so whoever's right, I mean, that's one of the things, we're not territorial, right? When you have somebody you're comfortable with, you know you can pick up the phone call, that's why we have the lead counsel, so to speak. But whoever works for you and whoever's right that's who we have, because we don't want to shortchange you at all.
Okay, good, thanks. I just, yeah.
No, you're right, Jim.
You don't have to.
We're not taking Kate away.
You don't have to be the backup.
I think Jim's trying to ask Jim's trying to ask if Kate's name can go on the top of that
She
paper.
can, I don't have a problem with it.
I'll tell Jay to not show his
Well,
ugly mug around.
I just think that, and I can only speak for me, but I think in the past year and a half, as a member of the Board of Selectmen, I've been comfortable with the process that we have made and when you've come up
Right.
and spoke. You know, I know you're telling us the right stuff. I mean, I'll look it up, or I'll come prepared to the meeting and just, you know, I'll know that you're telling me, you know, what I wanted to hear, so.
Yeah, thank you. I prefer to, or I'm happy, that's flattering, thank you for saying that, and I try to give not only the answer you like, but the right answer, and again, to Lisa's point, because there are many roads to get to a certain point, try to get you in the most expeditious way, and take the path of least resistance, I guess, so thank you.
Good. Mr. Dye?
Yeah, well, seeing how Jim stole mine.
I'm gonna sign a paper before I leave that says Kate is it.
I think that's all right.
I'm embarrassed.
You know?
I'm
Push
blushing.
my chair back slightly.
So I guess my question would be, seeing how you guys are familiar with the town of Hanson, what liabilities or opportunities do you foresee the town of Hanson having in the future? And how would your firm handle those issues or opportunities and go from there?
Well, I think the biggest thing that I've seen from this board is trying to develop commercial opportunities in the town, which is huge. It develops your tax base, it makes it a destination place, and I think we're really well equipped to explore the unique options that this state provides. So whether it be a TIF or Lisa just did a special act with one community to create an economic development grant fund. So that I see is the biggest, I don't want to say hurdle because that sounds negative, but the biggest opportunity for the town and something that I'm happy you're exploring, and I think we're well equipped to help get you there.
And it has to, so there's liabilities along with that, and that's why you have to be really careful about how you do it. Kate's example that she just used about this economic development fund, which is through a home rule petition, this community wanted to be able to take in, they had a bank that was willing to participate and they had some other funds available. And they wanted to be able to take the money into the town coffers in a special account, but then give grants for facade improvements, first and last month's rent, other kinds of economic development tools. But you can't do that with town funds, right? That's the anti-aid amendment, it violates the anti-aid amendment. So we drafted a special legislation to allow them to actually do it with a set of constraints that the Board of Selectmen controlled. It hasn't been fully approved yet by the legislature, but obviously, not obviously, the town meeting approved it and it went forward. So there are different ways to do it, and you can kind of pull in all these various tools in your toolbox when you're talking about trying to change zoning or encourage commercial development. There are different ways you can do it to help folks along.
Thank you.
Laura?
You know me, I always have a few
That's
questions.
all right, no problem.
I thought I heard you guys say you would be willing, not on the labor portion of the work that we're talking about, but on the municipal portion, to entertain flat fee.
Sure.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure, because we may get to a point where we're trying to compare apples to apples, and
Right.
and it helps to know that. Can you tell me, it was strange to me, I looked through the RFP, and I don't know unless I'm missing something, Hanson wasn't listed in the towns you represent for land use and wetlands.
Those
literally.
are special council towns.
Okay, all right,
Right.
all right, because
So we
I'm
didn't-
going like,
Right, all
wow.
of our general council towns, obviously.
We didn't
do all
make the
that.
cut?
I know, well, you know. So those were our special council towns.
Okay, all right,
Right.
great. Jim asked, you're willing to go in for one but not the other if we decide?
sure, yeah.
Okay. Number of women partners and number of minority partners.
Partners?
Yeah, I know you're
I'm
the
the
founding
only-
member.
I'm
I'm
the
very
only-
impressed by that. That's awesome.
So I'm the only woman partner. So there are only 3 partners, Jay and Adam and myself. But in the firm,
Yep.
we have 4, 5, 5 and 5 maybe. 5 and 5 men and 5 women, and 1 minority.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, great. That's super helpful. Also wondering how many of your employees, and if you don't know this off the top of your head, even if just amongst the 3 of you, you could tell me, have served on an elected board or an appointed board in a town?
So I was the mayor of the city of Newburyport, and I was a city councilor in the city of Newburyport. And then I was city solicitor in the city of Somerville. Jay is the moderator in the town of Norfolk, and he also is on the Council on Aging. I won't say that. And he was on the Conservation Commission.
I was on the Town of Brookline Conservation Commission, both as a member, and after I relocated from the town, I thought that would end my service, but they saw fit to appoint me as an associate member. So I was the one Brookline member that didn't live in Brookline.
That must
for
have been
2
some
years.
interesting issues.
And I also serve on the Public Law Council for the Mass Bar Association currently.
Awesome.
Didn't Jay run for Board of Health too in Norfolk?
Um,
A long time
He
ago?
ran for Board of Selectmen a long time ago.
Oh, I knew that.
I don't know that he did for the Board of Health. Then we have one of our associates is on the environmental policy group. It's not an elected group, but of the Mass Bar Association. We have another associate, Sarah serves on something in Beverly. I'm not really sure what it is. And I don't know about yourself,
And
Kate.
I wasn't on a board, but I obviously worked for the city of Brockton. I was appointed as the assistant solicitor and became the senior assistant solicitor.
Okay.
So you ask a really great question, which is one of the things that Jane and I particularly talk about when we go, because we've been in your position, right? I understand how important it is to get information from your council, and that it's not just no or yes. You want to be able to get something done, and Jay does too. And I think particularly in Jay's position as moderator is really helpful in our town meeting situation. So.
And that
It's a
comes
great
through.
question.
I do want to say has been incredibly responsive anytime that we've dealt with her. She's got an ability to boil things down to a very understandable level, and we find her to be delightful to work with. I echo what Jim said. So you could just strike Jay
It's
off
not a
there.
problem.
Like Jay.
We're gonna resubmit. We're gonna resubmit and have that
She's
right
how we
at the
did
top.
last
Jim,
time,
never
too.
heard of this Jay that you speak of.
I just have one last question. When you think about going forward with the firm, what role do you see technologies taking in your firm? As we start to look at robotics and that type of thing, is that anything you guys have explored?
We're gonna send a drone to Hanson. Really, that's what we're gonna do. And so we're gonna watch you all the time. We're a small firm, right? So we have 10 attorneys. We represent 17 communities, do some other private work. But we have we have an IT, we're not an on-staff, an IT person, but we have we have 2 IT people that service us really regularly, are very careful. We do a lot of real estate work too, so they're very careful with our security in particular. And we try to keep everybody as current as possible for all of the various computer
And in
kind
terms of
things.
like investigations and that type of thing that you might have to do you employ any kind of technologies there?
We had to do an email search thing once that we had to employ our computer folks to do. And actually, I work closely with some towns that we have. A couple of towns, some of the towns we have like amazing IT departments because they have the funding to do it, and others don't. But we try to help get them through on the things like the public records requests related to emails and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So we have had to employ experts in those regards.
Okay, thanks, that's helpful.
Mr. Buss? Anything?
Realistically, I think everything's just about been covered. I was just interested, reading the proposal. I mean, it appeared to me, having no real history with the legal history of Hanson, that really we have not been involved in much litigation with Jay,
Right.
or, that arbitration that went forward to any distance. I mean, is this a reflection on the firm? Is this a reflection on the town? It's like, is this a true perception?
So yes, and it's a little bit of both, which is why it'd be interesting whether or not you want to ever talk about the flat fee or not. So one of our goals is to prevent litigation. I mean, because look, if everybody litigated everything, we'd make a lot of money, right? But our goal is not to do that. Our goal is to resolve things, to provide advice in advance, to pick up the phone to the chair of the zoning board, of the planning board, of the conservation commission before they take an action, or to be at the meeting with them to help them before they take an action. Sometimes you have to do it, right? The case that Mike Kennebec had last year that went, 5 trial days, right? Sometimes you have to do it because the board needs to enforce your laws, right? There are things that are principled that you want to go forward on. But if the community works together with us, we tend to be able to prevent litigation. That's not going to say that you can prevent it all. We have a community that no matter who goes to the zoning board, the neighbors want to appeal it, right? So we have a lot of cases in the land court in this particular community, but we just basically what we call go along for the ride, because then the developers are paying for the litigation. We're there, we file a notice of appearance unless it's something the town really wants to see the zoning board supported on. So in most of our communities, I think you would find that because we work more closely up front, we reduce the litigation.
Good, excellent. All right, well, thank you guys very much. We
Thank you.
appreciate your time.
It's great to see you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you. Thanks, Laura.
Nice meeting you.
I don't want to embarrass her again.
Thank you.
Great job on changing that marijuana.
We want to see your name on the letterhead.
I don't.
That's our goal.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Thank you.
You did make me embarrassed.
I'm sorry. Lisa, just as a note, I was just in a
Carol,
wedding
Good.
reception.
Let's take a
in
5-minute
Newburyport.
recess, Carol, please.
It was a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you.
2 blocks went blacked out in the nor'easter.
Thank you. As soon as I open up the meeting, I will call you, yes. Let me know when you're ready, Carol. Okay. Now on to new business, we're gonna interview our second legal counsel interview, Brooks and Durensis, I apologize. And I'd like to introduce Paul Durensis. Thank you.
I'm Paul Durensis. I think the way to distinguish us and to remember us is that we're the ones who are practical and are driven by common sense. This is because I've been a selectman myself for 22 years. Peter Barry, who's with me, has been a selectman for 3 terms.
Yeah.
We've been on both sides of the table. I've been a town council for more than 30 years. So I've been in your seat, and I know what it's like to have a lawyer not give me a practical solution. As a selectman, I want to get things done. I want to have solutions. I want to move things along. I don't want to see a lot of legal bills. I want practical solutions. That's what we offer. Because we've been on both sides, because we know what you need for you to be effective, we can be effective for you. So a little bit about our competence. I've been Harvard College, Harvard Law School. I've been on the Mass Municipal Association Board of Directors. I'm on the Executive Committee. I'm a former president of the Massachusetts Selectmen's Association. I've been on the Local Government Advisory Committee appointed by Deval Patrick and then by Charles Baker, where we advise on local affairs, advise the governor on matters of cities and towns. We have represented a number of communities for a very long time. Great success. There's a couple of issues. I've been reading your newspaper, and I've been going through your website to see what issues might affect you. So we have a lot of experience with regional schools. We have, in the community that I've been a selectman for 22 years, we have the Dover-Sherburne Regional School System. As town council, I've worked with the Concord-Carlisle School System, the Narragansett School System, which is Templeton and Philliston. I've worked with Groton-Dunstable Regional Schools. Since we submitted the proposal, we're now town council in Groton, which has a regional school system. So we have experience with regional schools, and we know that you have a regional school system. And I also saw that you had some difficulty with regional school issues some years back. You wouldn't have that difficulty with us. We know this stuff inside and out. And then I read in the newspaper you're dealing with recycling. And so I'm in a community where it costs us more to recycle than it does to just throw the stuff into the trash. We're actually 30% higher cost to recycle. So I've been working with DEP, I've been working with the Mass Municipal Association to try to address that imbalance. I can tell you everything you want to know about China and the impact and what the state is doing and what we're doing. But I saw that in your newspaper, and I saw that you were trying to address that issue. Another issue I saw from reading was I would call the economic development issue. This is our strong suit. We have quite a history of helping communities with economic development projects. We're able to take your bylaws to try and figure out what is it that makes you unattractive or more attractive to potential business moving into town. We're able to make you more ready for development. There's a lot that we can do to open the town up to being more receptive and better placed for economic development. In our proposal, we have pages of economic development projects that we have had success on. You can see it starting at page 11, starting page 9, under the heading Economic Development. So let me turn it over next to Peter Barry and have him say a few words about what he does.
Thank you. Well, my name is Peter Barry. My expertise is in labor and employment law. I first started working in the public sector labor field in 1984 when I became general counsel for a large public entity, and did that work for 10 years, negotiating labor contracts with the whole range of employees, from public safety, police personnel, to skilled tradesmen, to laborers, to white-collar employees, to management employees. Dealt a lot with retirement issues in those positions, all the range of issues that public sector entities face on a day-to-day basis. Moved on to the firm in 1993, and since then have been chair of the labor and employment section of the firm. So in the early 90s, when DeVal Patrick came along, he appointed me to a committee made up of labor representatives, management representatives, intended to rewrite the public sector collective bargaining law. We were make it more efficient and responsive to the concerns and interests of both management and labor. So we redrafted the law, got it through the legislature, and implemented it. The governor then appointed me to be a member of the Advisory Council for the State Labor Relations Commission, deals with public sector unions. And the Labor Management Committee is part of that group. And we were responsible for recommending appointments for commissioner to the governor. So I have many years of experience. Over the years, really, the focus in the labor and employment field has drifted much more toward employment than labor, traditional union labor issues, still plenty of those around, negotiations, grievances, arbitrations, those kind of things. But the explosion has really been in the employment field with the Fair Labor Practices Act and the Family Medical Leave Act and the new pregnancy leave statutes that have been passed recently by the legislature. There's now going to be, doesn't apply to cities and towns, but there will actually be a paid family medical leave that'll be going into effect for private employers. You'll apply to a state agency to get family leave, and they'll pay you a benefit for a certain number of weeks. So all of those issues, discrimination issues, certainly very important part of our work, dealing with cities and towns to teach them, train their staff and their employees about sexual harassment, age discrimination, all of those issues, disability discrimination, very important issue that has a lot of things that come up all the time that need to be resolved in accordance with their reasonable accommodation requirements. So I deal with all of those issues. On the private side, again, I'm a selectman in Acton. I'm in my third term. I've lived in Acton for 30 years. When I first moved there was a vacancy on the Housing Authority Board. I had worked for a Housing Authority, so I immediately got on the Housing Authority Board. I've been on just about every board in town, moved on to the Affordable Housing Corporation that deals with 40B projects in town, moved on to the Zoning Board of Appeals, Conservation Commission, founding member of the first chair of the Community Preservation Committee. We jumped on board right in 2002 when the act first came along. I'm still, as a selectman, a member of the Community Preservation Committee today. I am a member of the Health Insurance Trust in town. We are self-insured for health insurance. We've been very successful negotiating with unions under the statute that came out a few years ago that enhanced the employer's ability to make changes in health insurance. We recently implemented high deductible plans with a health savings account that has saved the town a ton of money. And you all know how much of the budget is taken up by employee health insurance and benefits. So I have experience in that field as well. And I think that broad range of experience in working with local town government is just kind of part of my DNA. I'm invested in local government. Gives me a perspective that a lot of other people don't bring to the table in negotiations. I like to approach negotiations with respect for the other side. Certainly your employees are the people you got to rely on to deliver the services on a day-to-day basis to the residents of the town of Hanson, and you need to maintain good relationships with them. There's a whole process that's developed over the last 20 years or so called collaborative bargaining, which has a complicated kind of process to it, but I do like to approach the table with more of speaking about broad interests rather than just taking individual proposals and putting them on the table. The general discussion, first of all, about what the interests of each side are that they're trying to accomplish, and then you can draft proposals out of that discussion that be more acceptable to the other side. I mean, I do think you have to be tough at the table, but you also need to explain why you're taking positions so that the other side can understand. They may not agree with you particularly, but at least if they understand why you take a particular position, they can respect you for taking that position. So thank you very much, and we hope to answer any questions you might have.
So,
We want to let
Good.
Kim say a few words.
Absolutely.
That's good.
go ahead.
I'm Kim Salant. I'm a litigator. I'm a 1982 graduate of Cornell University and applied to one law school Northeastern School of Law because I was interested in the co-op program where I won my first case. I graduated from Northeastern in 1986. I entered the insurance defense field. I primarily concentrated on civil rights violations. I practiced in district court, state court, superior court, federal court. I began as I said, working in New England's largest litigation firm, and I had at that point been called in to be special town counsel representing about approximately 65 different communities by insurance companies whose insured had been sued for alleged civil rights violations. And in connection with that special town counsel appointment, I argued, briefed, and won over 60 motions primarily in federal court involving civil rights violations. After I worked for Morrison, Mahoney and Miller, I then became assistant corporation counsel for the city of Boston, where I tried several cases in federal court. I remained there for 3 years and went back into private practice. I started working, actually I met Paul in 1986, where we had a civil rights case involving a dog and a dog owner. And the question was, we're going to interrogate the dog with a deposition or send her written interrogatories. And in any event, what happened with that matter, we found the dog a better place to live. But Paul and I have known each other since 1986. We started working together hand in glove in 1987, April 7th to be precise. I've been with Paul since 1987, and I have been his partner for several years. In my practice now, I do mainly land use law, although I've done some civil rights work in connection with alleged violations against police officers. I concentrate in land use. I do 38 administrative appeals. I do 40A work. I do Chapter 41 subdivision work. I do Chapter 79 eminent domain takings, just to name a few. I represent zoning boards of appeals, planning boards, conservation commissions, water commissioners and commissions. I represent boards of selectmen, town managers, boards of health, conservation commissions, to name a few. I've also done some what I call affirmative work for towns. I had a matter in which we had some severely damaged flooring as a result of breach of contract and negligent work. We were initially offered $101,000. We actually settled for over $800,000 once I got involved. So I do plaintiff's work for town as well. Let's see. I don't suffer from false modesty, so I'm going to tell you that I'm highly successful in what I do. I'm proud of what I do, and I'm very good at it. But I've also learned that there's a time to litigate, and there's a time to engage in alternative dispute resolution, and there's wisdom in knowing the difference. In recent past, I was actively involved in a mediation in which I fair to say that the private parties had a strong dislike for one another. And I was asked to and did participate in this mediation by a superior court judge. And after much patience with all people involved and much persistence, we were able to settle that matter, which I'm proud of, and my clients were dismissed. I think that you couldn't do better than Brooks Durensis in terms of representation of your town. We care, we work hard, and we're here for you. And thanks for the opportunity to talk to you.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you. So we have a intermunicipal agreement with a neighboring town for a IT director. So if you were town council for both sides, for the neighboring community and us, and an issue arose, how would you handle that?
So we do represent more than one community in the state. And so the first thing we try to do is to resolve the issues with both communities in a collaborative way. So rather than assuming that there's some kind of adversarial relationship, we try to make it work for everybody. If there was an adversarial relationship, you were fighting with your other community, we would not, and we were representing the other community, we would not be able to represent either community. But we don't represent any of the communities immediately touching your community, so we don't have that issue here. We do represent the town of Canton and the town of Randolph, which are adjoining communities. And over more than a decade, there's never been an issue that we haven't been able to work out. Because when I'm representing two communities together, we can figure out a way to work collaboratively to solve problems for both communities, rather than to keep it adversarial.
Okay. So, if you were me and you had to interview 5 potential firms for town council, what is it that you would look for in the next firm?
Well, I'll answer that by saying I've done that many times, because I've had to hire town council. And I've gone through a number of council and replaced a number of council. But I don't want to talk about why the council weren't good, because this isn't about being negative. But what I look for is this. There have been many times I've been a selectman, I need to make a decision, and I get advice that first of all I think is not correct, because I know the law. Or secondly, it is so long and involved where on the one hand, on the other hand, by the time I get to the end of the advice I'm getting, I didn't know what the advice was. And I don't have patience for that. And I need to protect my whole board. I mean, we need to make decisions. We need to move the public agenda forward, not try to figure out what did town council mean? What was he trying to say? So we try to give you the short version and the long version. We'll tell you right up front, we think the answer is X. And you might say, well, is there another way to do it, and so on, and we'll tell you if that's what you want to accomplish. We'll try to figure out how to accomplish it, but we'll tell you the right answer up front in a short way. And if you want the long version, we'll give you the long version. You want it at 10 o'clock at night because you're in the middle of a meeting, you want to pick up the phone and ask us, we've done that. We'll answer you right then and there. I've had people at a meeting, they're arguing about a legal point, they'll pick up the phone, they'll call me at 10 o'clock at night, ask me what the law is. We'll have an answer for you right then. Not this, we'll get back to you. Then we don't assign stuff to young associates and have some young associate spend a month doing this research and this long law review type of article that's filled with all these obscure citations. And no, we're practical. We know you want to get something done. You know that you need to make decisions and move forward. We'll give you the answer.
And I think that's where our experience in town government certainly helps, because it's oftentimes, you want to accomplish something, you have a plan, a strategy to get there. We can work with, we understand what goals are that selectmen want to reach, and we're able to say, well, why don't you try this way of getting there that will avoid, for instance, if it's a union issue, problems with the union, and get you the same outcome that you're seeking. So a lot of that comes from our own practical experience, not only having represented selectmen, but being selectmen and working from the inside as well. So
I can give you a practical example. Last week, I got an email. The email was 9 pages long. I got an email, and the top of the email said, "What is our liability?" Okay, quickly reverse, read 9 pages. That was done in 15 minutes, because the answer to the question, what is our liability, had to do with snow on sidewalks and reorganizing bus stops, and where we do plow and where we don't presently plow. And so what is our liability? You're potentially exposed under Chapter 84 for a defect in a public way, $5,000 limit liability, or a 258 claim, which is $100,000 per plaintiff per incident. And I went on to say I can easily envision where a mom or a dad or a sister or a brother might see an accident involving their younger brother or sister. So that was a 15-minute exercise, 10 minutes worth of which was reading the 9 pages of email, but it turns out they needed the answer right now for a meeting that they were having. So that's a little excerpt from one day at BD, meeting Brooks Francis.
Jim?
Evidently, Mr. Chairman, I stole Selectman Dyer's
So
question.
we'll let him.
So I will yield the floor to Selectman
Go ahead.
Dyer.
Sure, so I have a couple of questions for your firm. It says you're based in Boston. Do you guys have any satellites offices more towards the South Shore? Or are you guys solely based in Boston?
We're based in Boston because the courts are there, state government is there, the state administrative offices are there. I can walk from my office and be in the State House in minutes. So that's where it's at. I am on the road to my various towns pretty much every day. So you will find me on the South Shore usually quite often. I will be working out of different town halls. I go to meetings. I work with people. You will find me, if you hire us, you will find us here whenever you need us.
Okay.
And we don't charge you for that because I'm usually in the area anyway.
Great, thank you. My second question for you is, with you, if you were selected and you're becoming more familiar with Hanson, how do you become up to speed with the town, learn our history, especially with bargaining units, what was, debated in the past, and how do you become more informed about those decisions?
Well, I'll let Peter answer the bargaining issue, but we have a standard way that we do transitions. So if you let me use an analogy, it's like when you go to a new doctor, what does the doctor do? He gives you a physical exam. We will take your bylaws, your zoning bylaws, your general bylaws, your rules and regulations, take a look at it. And many times we'll see stuff in there that's outdated, it's obsolete, or contradictory to each other. And as I mentioned before, many communities have things that are really anti-development, that if somebody wanted to locate here, if you had an Amazon that wanted to put a facility here, they would look at your bylaws and cross you off. So we'll go through all of that and we'll try to figure out where you are on the spectrum. And then we'll try and work with you over the next few town meetings with suggestions, like why not update this? Or your conservation bylaw is one that's 10 years old. Why not use the current bylaw? These are model bylaws that other communities have perfected. So we'll bring it to you and say, would you be interested in going to town meeting with updates to your bylaws? But on the labor issues, let me turn it over.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would start by gathering all your collective bargaining agreements and reading through them. Certainly, I can make suggestions about, based on my experience with all the other towns and cities and bargaining units I've dealt with, for possible additions or changes, deletions that might help the town be in a better position financially, maybe, to administer your collective bargaining agreements. When do they expire? What order do they expire in? Certainly sit down with the town administrator and talk about what the town priorities are. Maybe meet with the selectmen in executive session to talk about negotiations and what positions you want to put on the table. But basically it would be an educational process. Again, I think we could provide training in all the various discrimination areas or any other issues that town staff, administrators might want to get up to speed on about how to deal with relations with your employees. Certainly the day-to-day issues that come up, discipline issues, attendance issues, whatever. There are obviously a range of options in how to respond to those, and I think I'm pretty good at, working with managers to answer questions about how to supervise staff and work with staff on a day-to-day basis, again, with the goal to maintain that respect that you need to have between your management staff and your unionized staff.
While we're talking about respect, one of the things I've done in MMA Mass Municipal Association and the Mass Selectmen's Association, is to help put together a program called Me Too in Town Hall. Me Too is this movement, as you know, where people have come forward about bad experiences that they've had in the past. This is a training program that we put together that we think all selectmen should go to, and town administrators should go to, and mayors, and so I'm not limiting it to anybody, but anybody in public service needs to know the importance of having a respectful workplace where people can come to work and not have encounters that are inappropriate in the workplace. And we think a little bit of training, a little bit of sensitization is worth so much in making every town hall and every city hall better than it is to try and pick up the pieces where somebody files a complaint, possible litigation, bad headlines, a mess if you don't address it. So we would urge you to go to some of these programs, to get this kind of program going here in this town. Not that I'm aware of any particular reasons to do it, but this is just something that needs to be done for every city in town.
Laura?
Yep. So, if you guys were to highlight one or the other practice as your bench strength, what would it be? The labor or the municipal?
We are a full-service firm.
But if you have to pick one?
If I had to pick one?
Yes.
Probably the municipal side is more active. We only brought 3 people here, but we have 10 lawyers.
Yes.
So we do the real estate piece, we do the litigation piece, we do the labor piece, we do open meeting law, public records. Probably the largest volume of stuff is open meeting law complaints and public records requests and reviewing executive session minutes for release, procedural matters, but can you go into executive session, can't you go into executive session? That's probably where so the municipal side is.
That came through I thought it came through quite strongly in your RFP. I served on CPC for 8 years. I think I may have even seen you speak at something. You guys both looked very familiar to me. Maybe Bridgewater had a couple of things. So I know you guys are involved. I was also incredibly impressed with the level of municipal involvement across your firm. That everybody, is either, it seems as though almost everybody has either served in an elected position or an appointed position or something. I think that that's critically important. And you mentioned trainings, and I think that's something that we should strive for in the future, and we have done some. I'm wondering what types of trainings do you guys offer, aside from the ones that you've just mentioned, the Me Too and some of the others. Do you have any other ones that you'd like to highlight?
We do open meeting law, we do public records, we do state ethics, we do what we call a deliberative process. And let me just explain that a little bit. We think boards and committees should be transparent and friendly places for people to come and address and be able to be heard. And many times you find, and I'm not saying about this town, I'm just saying in general, many times people leave meetings feeling rudely treated, not listened to, disrespected, not happy with the process.
Mm-hmm.
They have something they want to say that didn't feel that the process served them. So we do training on making town boards and committees work better, be more open, have better communication with your constituents.
Okay, thanks, that's helpful. In terms of vendors, do you ever use any for any work that you would potentially do? And I'm thinking particularly maybe like litigation, if there's records that have to be, reviewed, that type of thing. Do you ever find it more effective to use a vendor, than to do things in-house?
We would recommend an outside investigator if you had, I'll let Peter talk about this, but there are investigators.
Well, if there is a complaint about an employee, sometimes sexual harassment, other misconduct that needs to be investigated, we recommend hiring an independent investigator to do that. If we do it ourselves, it may be litigation that might come out of that, which would put us in a bad position. Also, these investigators don't charge normally as much as the lawyers would. We have a guy who's a former personnel director for Brookline for 30 years or something, who we've used an awful lot. In those circumstances, certainly we would recommend so that you have an independent investigation, you get the results of that investigation, you can make some kind of determination about what action might need to be taken or whether there's no substance to that complaint in the first place.
Okay, that's super helpful, thank you. That was all I had.
That's all?
Yep.
I very much appreciate that you guys are strong in wetlands regulation. We are definitely the outwash plain. So I would say we are probably almost 50% swamp. And you from your research, you see that, economic development is important to us, and it's limited. Our capacity to develop is limited. And one of the major parts is right on Main Street, which runs right along the Great Cedar Swamp. So as we are moving forward to try to regrow the economic possibilities of Main Street, which once, when you could use a swamp as a cranberry bog, was huge. And all that's been lost, basically, in town. So to try to build a new economic future, commercial future, industrial future, I don't know, we're all here, all of us, the town, not the board, the entire town I think in the next several years, we're going to be facing lots of balancing act between, conservation and commercial, and how to play that off. And it seems to me, from what I read of your proposal, that, you are very strong in this field of conservation, wetlands protection, and so forth.
Let me say a couple of things. First of all, it was a joy to read how many lakes you have, how many...
We think so too.
It may sound bad to all of you to have so much water, but from my perspective, it was wonderful to see so many bodies of water that are worth preserving. And the second point I would make is that you can have economic development and protection of the environment. I think it doesn't have to be that they're adversaries. It doesn't have to be choose either to have economic development or protect the environment. You can do both. If you have the right people and the right team, you can accomplish some very nice economic development that's consistent with the environment or improves the environment at the site. They don't have to be in conflict.
That is very reassuring to hear, too. And this last thing is just bizarre. I just want to say, is it Ms. Salant?
You can call me Kim.
Kim, I can call you Kim?
Yeah, it's easy.
Kim, from Euclid to Lucas, I just simply went, of course I saw it, but it was like,
Yes.
well, Euclid is geometry, I thought, and I have no idea what Lucas is, who Lucas is. Like, so someday, not now,
We'll talk.
but we have to talk and just tell me, what on earth would that retrospective entail?
He's talking about something I wrote quite a while
Yes.
ago. Oh, yeah.
Yes, quite a while ago, 1992.
Oh, now you're aging me.
I'm older
Yes.
than you by a chunk, so don't worry about it. So.
Well, thank you guys very much. We appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
your
you very much.
Thank you.
If you think of any other questions,
Oh, yes, please.
we can consider this a rolling interview. If something comes up, shoot us an email from the town administrator. We're happy to submit it to you. And just sort of as a closing statement, if I could, just to say that this town would fit well with our model. It's a town that I think we can do a lot for, particularly on the economic development side. The fact that you have such a nice environment is one of the things that's attracted us to be here. We represent communities and have represented communities in the past in which the environment has been very important to them. We think that we would be a good fit and that we can do some wonderful things for your town. Give us a chance.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Carol, 5-minute recess, okay?
I taught 12-year-olds.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we're opening back up. So, last under new business, we have town council, our last interview with Norris, Murray, and Pelican. So we have Melissa and Leo here. And Leo, take it away.
Well, thank you. I was thinking tonight as I came in that for 14 years I've been before a lot of boards of selectmen. And it's usually they want to do something, they're seeking my legal advice. So tonight I'm here to, you want to do something, I'm going to give you my legal advice. You can keep us as labor counsel. But as in the past, whenever you sought advice, you ask why, and so tonight we're here to tell you why. You've met Melissa. With this board, you're a relatively new board, not everybody, but just as combined as a board, you're a relatively new board. And, so you've seen me, and you'll continue to see me as the lead person, but everybody needs backup. Melissa's really the brains behind the operation.
This is true.
So I wanted to bring Melissa tonight, but, our firm, you really don't know that much about our firm, except we have provided you with this, and I'm sure you've read it cover to cover. Your eyes must be glazing over after everything that you've seen from all the different, firms, and it all kinds of runs together after a while. But let me have Melissa first tell you a little bit about herself, because I think we've heard enough from me over the years to know what I'm about, but let me have Melissa give you a little background on her.
Hi, thank you all for having us. I am a 2002 graduate of Holy Cross in Worcester, and after that I went and worked in legal aid for a little bit, doing legal aid and counseling. Afterwards decided to go back to school, so I got my law degree and MBA at Suffolk University, graduated in 2010. I started as a law clerk while I was still in school with Collins, Lockard, and Pelican, which is where I met Leo, Phil, and Tim. So I've been with the firm since 2008. Graduated in 2010 and went to practice full-time for them, and have been just enjoying it ever since. It's a great group of people, very knowledgeable, lots of experience. My focus primarily is I do a lot of the day-to-day advice. People call into the office, they have questions about hiring, promotional practices, and employee situation. So I provide a lot of advice and counsel on the phone to clients, helping them with research, if they have employment questions, ADA questions, FMLA questions, anything like that is a lot of what I handle. I also do some school law work for our firm. The other area that I do a lot of work in are police and fire interest arbitrations. So those are if you go to the Joint Labor Management Committee. So I do a lot of comparability data for cities and towns on primarily police and fire, but all different units as well. So because I have the MBA, I do a lot of work pulling together the data from different cities and towns, depending on who the client is, assessing their benefits, what they're providing, where our client may be falling short or where they may be ahead, strengths and weaknesses. I also go over and do the ability to pay analysis. So I take a look at what you have, what your financial situation is, strategic planning, capital costs, upcoming expenses, and I weigh that against what the union might be asking for, and how we can kind of, whether or not we have the ability to pay what they're asking for, and make that case to the Joint Labor Management Committee. So I've been doing that for about the last 6 years, I would say, intensively. We do about 2 or 3 of those a year. They're really labor intensive. That's a lot for someone to be doing in a year for different clients. So most recently, just did Somerville Superiors, done Somerville Patrol, Somerville Fire, Woburn, Haverhill. I helped Leo with the Westwood case that ended up settling. So we've done a lot of cases over the years, and that's something that I really enjoy because I get to use kind of my legal mind with also the business aspect of things. And I think it's an area where clients don't often spend a lot of time because it can be hard to get all the information together, gather all the contracts, take a look at everything. So that's something that I do that I really enjoy. The other thing I do is trainings for clients, trainings and advice. So I will go in and do harassment trainings, sexual harassment trainings on federal compliance, how to conduct investigations, trainings for HR staff if you have any needs around complying with FMLA or ADA, supervisors, how to effectively supervise, that sort of thing. So those are kind of my areas of focus within our law firm.
So, well, we're on the subject of training. In our handout submission, you'll see that in tab 7, we do a lot of training seminars for the Mass Municipal Association. So we go up, the latest one I did was when the marijuana law passed in Massachusetts, and medicinal marijuana, the issues in the workplace. There was a big case in Massachusetts where an employee got fired because they found marijuana in a drug test, but the employee was taking it medicinally. And the case established the fact that just like any other prescription medicine, you have to treat marijuana the same way. And it's led to all kinds of questions. How do you deal with police officers? How do you deal with other employees when they have these prescriptions? So, we looked at all those issues in whether it was from the Mass Municipal Personnel Association or the Mass Municipal Association at the annual meeting. They come to us and they say, you're a firm that specializes in this. Can you come up and tell us what the legal implications are? So you'll see in tab 7 just a representative example of the types of trainings that we do. Those are available to anybody in the municipal association. We tend to do them at the annual meeting or the annual labor relations seminar. And then when we do them, what we do afterwards, even if our clients weren't there, we'll send them around. We use the town administrator as the conduit to get those. But we have a website, hot legal issues, legal developments. You can look at the website. There's blogs on there, short advisories, those types of things. What I handed out to you tonight is just the latest installment of what we call our client advisor. We gave you some back in June when we submitted the proposal at tab 6. And you can see just by these that have come out, and we didn't pick necessarily all of them, but these that have come out since then, again, these go to the town administrator, but there's nothing to say that anybody on the Board of Selectmen that wants to get on the mailing list, all you have to do is tell us and we'll email them to you. We give you these every month with your bill. It helps to take a little sting out of the bill when you have a legal bill that you have to open with it. But we put these together, what's new in the law. So you see example in September, the Equal Pay Act was a big piece of legislation that the legislature and the governor signed a while back, and reminding people that it's there, what you have to do to prepare for it, what to insulate yourself from discrimination claims. You'll see the cancer presumption expanding to 111F injuries of firefighters. What that means now is that a firefighter who has any type of cancer while they're employed by a city or town as a firefighter, the legislature has now established a presumption that that cancer occurred on the job, meaning that like a firefighter who breaks their leg has to show that they broke it on the job, firefighters who develop cancer don't have to show that anymore. You can decide whether you think that's wise or not wise, but that's legislation now that's in effect. We've advised our clients to bargain about that because it's somewhat like an unfunded mandate. The legislature now has basically said, you pay the freight for this. And we're involved now in several communities where that's become an issue as to, whether that's a bargainable topic, whether it means medical bills as well. It could be a huge cost with just one case. Certainly, no one wants anybody to contract cancer, but before then, you couldn't find a firefighter case where a firefighter, I shouldn't say you couldn't find, there are few and far between where the firefighter could actually prove that the cancer arose from the employment. So, those types of developments, you'll see the legislature, I don't know the consistency in this, but at the same time that they were establishing the presumption, the cancer presumption for firefighters, they were relaxing the no smoking law for firefighters. So go figure. Before, if you got caught smoking, if you were hired after a certain date, it was automatic termination. Now you get one bite at the apple. So that probably tells you that the firefighters union has quite a lobby up at the legislature.
Those are the sorts of things we want to make clients aware of, so that you can be aware of it in bargaining, or if you're dealing with your unions, that you have just a little bit of information about what's been going on. If you have questions, you can always call us for more information, but we try to keep you up to date on what's happening through our client advisors.
So you see, the latest case was a police officer was fired for lying, and the SJC is kind of, as they say, split the salami. There's a big L lie and a little L lie. Not a particularly great decision for employers, but those are the types of things that, police chiefs, fire chiefs have to know, and obviously town administrators. So all that information comes with the fact that your clients and your access to that, and we can do individualized training, but a lot of times it's more cost efficient to come to those seminars and see what we're doing there, and that keeps everyone up to date. So having said that, and I joked a little bit about taking my legal advice, but I will tell you in all sincerity, it's been a privilege to serve as labor counsel in the town of Hanson for 14 years. I think it's 14 going on 15. When I started, I had a full head of hair. And tonight I'm here, and you can see the state has let me in. I didn't have that much hair to begin with, honestly. But beyond saying it's been a privilege, I hope that you'll find when you look at our record here in the town that I've treated it like a privilege. There's not a day that goes by that if Hanson needs something, needs advice, needs it on a deadline basis, needs it on a weekend or a night or whatever it takes, I'm there to provide it. Not without help from people like Melissa backing me up, but we're there to provide it. I think Mike would attest to that since he's been town administrator. I think Mary, who's been here even longer than me, would attest to that we help them get things done, and when the board has something it needs to have done and needs to have it done legally, we're there for the board to do it as well. It's inevitable. You work for a variety of boards of selectmen. I couldn't name them all on the board members. You work for a variety of town administrators, a variety of department heads. The ones that are here now, I think would attest to the fact that when they need something in the labor council area, that we're responsive, we're prompt, we give them the advice they need to do things right. I hope this board, I've only been before you a few times, but I hope you feel the same way based on the projects and the votes and what you needed to accomplish. The role is not always easy. It's just as board members, there are items that are more controversial than others. And you're here because you view the town as your town and you want to protect the interests of the town. And you end up taking some flack for that. You make a decision, and at some point in time, it's going to offend some people, and some people are going to like it. And the longer you stay on the board, the more it's going to get that way. And you hope the balance keeps with the people that like it and understand that you're here to protect the town's interest. So, Labor Council, we've come to the town. We've had in the past some very controversial issues. One thing I've always wanted to get across, we're the face. If the board says, go do this investigation, or go handle this matter, or go go negotiate with this union. You know, we don't make up what we can give the unions. We don't decide what investigations we're gonna do. We just give legal advice, and if we're asked to do something, we do it as thoroughly, as diligently as we can. It doesn't make us popular all the time, and sometimes it doesn't make us popular at all, because, you know, we are having to ask people uncomfortable questions, fair questions, but uncomfortable questions. We're asked to do reports from time to time about what we find. We can't play favorites. We've got a job to do, and we do the job. We like to feel like, there's an old saying, hard on the issues, easy on the people. And I'm sure some people would disagree with that, but that's the way we try to do it. We try to do it respectfully, professionally. I would hope, I don't expect the labor unions to say, Pelican, what a great guy. But I would hope that they would say, when he comes, he's prepared, he's thorough, he's respectful, he's professional. I don't think you'll ever find someone that says he walked into the room and is screaming and yelling and pounding the table. It's not my style. It doesn't get anything accomplished. And you know, the reality is you have good unions here. They understand. They have a role. We have a role. We work things out. In the last round of bargaining, you know, Mike was the lead. I was in the background helping him. You've got all 3 contracts settled for 3 years, and you know, with everybody relatively happy, I think. But you know, if they always say if you settle a contract and both sides aren't a little unhappy, then something hasn't come out right. But you know, that's how we've always done it. But we've always had it to prior boards and this board. The boards have always understood that when we do the work and we become somewhat the bad guy, that we've always had the board stand behind us. Like if people came running to the board and said, hey, you know, get rid of them, or do this, or they did this, the board knew better, or would talk to us if there was an issue. And you know, we continue to play that role. You don't have a controversy now that I know of that I'm involved in, but there will be one coming along, and it will play out that way. And I think, you know, we're prepared to do what the board asks us to do it legally, to do it fairly. But at some point in time, we're gonna end up doing something, and someone's not gonna be happy about it. It's gonna be someone you know, friend, family member. And we just ask you to remember that we're only doing what you've determined is in the best interest of the town. And we respect that. Different boards have different views of what's in the best interest of the town. And when this board says this is what needs to be done in the best interest of the town, you know, that's what we'll do to carry that out. So what have we done in 14 years? Legal costs are always a concern of a municipality. And you have your fair share of legal costs. But sometimes I think the focus on how much does this firm charge or how much does that firm charge almost obscures, well, how much has that firm saved us? You know, you look at the bill and you say that's a big bill, but what would the bill have been in other areas if you didn't have counsel that was able to guide you through a situation, reach a result where the town was protected and wasn't spending money in another area? So litigation, I've heard it before, it drives the cost of legal costs. It drives legal costs, and that's true. But if you look at our track record, over 14 years going on 15 years, there have been 4 occasions where a case had to be litigated. In all those years, I mentioned 3 of them in the handout today. You can read those. They've all involved, in one way, shape, or form, the labor union in town, where the union and the town simply couldn't agree on a particular issue, involving money for the most part, you'll find in those issues, and it had to be litigated. It wasn't that we wanted to litigate it, but when you can't, sometimes you just can't reach an agreement. You have to respectfully agree to disagree, and you go to a third party to decide it. Those cases are important for 2 reasons. One, it tells you that our first option is not to litigate, it's to resolve matters. So we've handled, not all of them matters that would have reached litigation, but we've handled about 320 matters for the town, 320 different files open all these years, and we've had 4 cases. And each and every one of those cases had to be litigated, and each and every one of those cases, the town prevailed. And prevailing in those cases, however much was at stake, and there was money at stake in most of them, what it said to the folks that we were dealing with is that if it has to be litigated, we'll litigate it, okay? We don't look for litigation, but when you litigate something that has to be, and you prevail in the litigation, they know in the future that you gotta try to come to a settlement because the town's prepared to do it. So the last case we've had to litigate is 2012. So that's the last time, 6 years ago. And they're spread out like that.
So you're saying less than 1% just about of all the things that you've handled for
Yeah.
us have resulted in litigation, but
Correct.
even of those, it's resulted in favor, in a
All
favorable
4 favorable
determination.
decisions to the town. Now, to be fair, not all 320 matters, when a social media policy wasn't gonna be subject to litigation.
Right, they weren't rising to the level of
Right,
litigation.
but there's been quite a few matters where it's gotten to the point. You've had your fair share, no different than any other community. You've got great employees here, and then once in a while, you have an employee that's not so great, and you have to find a way to tell that employee your time in Hanson is done. So in 14 years, a number of those cases have occurred. There's never been any litigation over the separation of an employee from the town. That's because we resolve the matter in such a way, such the employee goes on their way, the town stays here, they get someone else for the position, and always you get a release, so that employee can't come back and go after the town. And, you know, I sound like, you know, we. The reality is we've got good people to work with, you know, whether it's a department head or the town administrator, all hands on deck, we try to guide that, but, you know, that's the track record. And I think if you talk to the current department heads, all of them will tell you the same thing. They've got a problem in the labor area, Mike will tell you he's got a problem, we help to solve it and guide it to a resolution at the least cost possible. You know, we haven't had a lot of those on your watch yet, but inevitably, it's a percentage thing. There's always gonna be a certain percentage of employees. The matters that come to mind with this board, you know, we had the intermunicipal agreement that was done. Mike will tell you this, I really wasn't even involved in that to begin with, and then he called me, it was either on a Sunday or he emailed me on a Sunday from Monday morning and basically said, you know, this thing, we gotta get this done, because there's a need to get this done, there was some deadlines involved. He'll tell you, I dropped everything, I made sure that the documents that were sent over from your partner with this East Bridgewater were done to protect the town's interests. You know, ultimately, those documents became the foundation for the intermunicipal agreement, and it got done. And that's been our availability with anything that's got a deadline like that, we did that. And that agreement now, if something goes awry with that agreement, I represent you. There's no allegiance to East Bridgewater, just other than getting it done, you know, continues to be my job to protect the town of Hanson. I will have no conflicts with that. The recent round of bargaining, you know, there was some tense moments, there were some deadline moments. Mike will be the first to tell you, Mary will be the first to tell you, whatever they needed done, prepared, drawn up, you know, we were there to draw it up. So, you know, over the years, this has been the way we've approached our labor council role. The other thing that's important about being here so many years, I don't remember every case we handled, but we certainly have a file on all of them. But I do remember significant issues. Every once in a while, an issue comes up where someone will say, this is what happened 5 years ago or 10 years ago, or, you know, many years ago, we took a zero, and now you should return it. When those issues come up and they're brought to my attention, I can tell you what really happened, okay? And that's an important thing to do. I don't suggest that the folks that make those claims are making them up. That's their memory of it. And in some instances, their memory of it is based on second and third hand information. But I can give you the exact information because I've got that institutional history. I can tell you why certain language was put in a collective bargaining agreement and what the parties intended for it to mean and intended for it to do. So, that's an important thing that I can do for the town that none of the other candidates can do. Most importantly, I can say this to you. You're going to have a lot of folks come in here and you want to be labor council. They're all fine attorneys. I know some of them personally. You might have seen greeting them in the hall. This is kind of a closed community, this area. So we know the actors and they know us and everybody respects everybody. But all they can say to you is they can say, this is what we'll do for you. Okay, I can sit here tonight and say to you, this is what we've done for you. And there's a big distinction in that because you know what you've had for 14 years and what we've done and how we've done what the boards have asked us to do and the town administrators. No one can make that claim. They may come in and they may do a great job for 14 years, but there's a bit of the unknown about that at this point in time. So, when other firms come in and they say, hey, not only is this what we can do for you, but we can do it more cheaply than you're doing it now. The reason firms come in and say that is because they don't have the track record, okay? I can show you the track record. We get a fair hourly rate. We're not the highest in the municipal area, we're not the lowest in the municipal area. But for what you pay, we save you money. And what you get from us is, I've got 33 years of experience, Melissa's got 8, I've got 2 other partners. The total is 110 years of experience in this field. We're embedded in the field. We're out keeping current in the field. We get decisions from the Department of Labor Relations, the Civil Service. We write the management commentary. We have all these. Every year we go to the Mass Municipal Association annual meeting. We do the labor and employment law update. We do friend of the court briefs. This is our passion. This is what we do. We don't just go up there because we like to keep current. That's the primary reason, but it also tells people who we are and how we are in the field. And it helps us to market and distinguish us from the others. But it's a lot of extra work on our part. We don't get paid for going up there and doing all this stuff. But it's helped us keep our profile and people come to us, and we continue to do that. So, we've seen advertisements for fees like, we can, $500. Anybody can call us all month, emails, unlimited calls, unlimited phone calls and emails. Just look at that more closely. We would be the first to tell you, you don't want your department heads having a pipeline to Labor Council. You want them going through the town administrator, because what happens is that once that relationship's established, it doesn't cut legal costs, it makes more. There's going to be some unnecessary things that get to Labor Council. We had a client we loved years ago. He was a great guy, but every day we got an urgent fax, not just a fax, that just tells you how long ago it was, an urgent fax. And finally we said to the town administrator, we said, hey, not for nothing, but it's almost like, he can't get a cup of coffee in the morning without going to Labor Council. He should be going through you. This is stuff that we shouldn't be talking to him about. So, that was nipped in the bud. Many, many years ago, I don't know what was in my head, but Mass Municipal said, do a seminar for us, controlling legal costs. The first rule of thumb is have a gatekeeper, make sure the gatekeeper knows what's going on, and make sure that it's something that should go to council, okay? I will say this to you, if a decision's made for it to go to council, you don't want a drive-by conversation or a quick email. You want council to take some time and assess it and guide you, because more cases are won then than are ever won at the end. There's an old saying, the Fram oil filter, I'm dating myself, they used to have a commercial about oil filters. You pay me now, you pay me later, but you don't go every time, you don't go all the way and then say, we just fired somebody. But if it's worth going to council, we think it's worth paying for counsel to look at it in a thorough basis and deal with it. So, you know, when you get those other, you know, we'll do this for less, we'll do that for less, we would say to you, here's what we've done for the fee that we charge. We think it's a fair fee. We think retainer type arrangements aren't fair to you or us because ultimately someone loses. We think it's much fairer if we provide services, we have a fair hourly rate, and we think it's worth it because it saves you money in the long run. But in the end, you know, it's up to you whether we continue. We would just ask that when you make the decision, that you look at the track record, the 14-year track record of what we've done. And we consider it a privilege every day, and we hope we have the ability to continue to have the privilege to serve the town.
Well, you answered my two questions in this summary.
I'll go.
Go ahead, Jim.
I'll go. Leo, you're right. It's what you've done where the others can't say that. You and I have worked for about a year and a half now. Your legal team, it says 4 partners. Are there more lawyers there, or is it just the 4 of you?
Just the 4 right now, although, you know, we're in the process of looking to add some help. In a small firm particularly, it's to grow from 4 to 5 is always a challenge. We always have a law student that works for us, and we have a very good law student right now who's about to graduate from law school. Melissa might have mentioned she started as a law student, and next thing you know, she was running the place. But you know, we like to get people that are experienced, because we like to say we don't send you any rookies, and we try not to do that.
Right.
And if someone's going to come in, we want to train them to the point where if we send them somewhere, that they're doing things the way that they should be done.
And, you know, in the year and a half that we have worked together, a lot of the stuff has been in executive session, which, you know, obviously we can't talk about at an interview. And that makes it difficult for me to ask questions because we've worked together for the last year and a half where the other firms, like you said, were coming in. Melissa, I noticed though on your bio that you also practice in Rhode Island.
I'm licensed to practice in Rhode Island. I have not actually practiced in Rhode Island, but I did take the Rhode Island bar.
Okay.
I'm originally from Rhode Island, that's where I grew up. So, and my dad is an attorney in Rhode Island, so I took Mass and Rhode Island. And I am able to practice there, but I don't right now.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah, thank you.
That's all.
So my question would be, knowing our town, you know, our opportunities, our liabilities, what do you foresee coming down the road here in the town of Hanson, and how would your firm handle those situations?
When you say coming down the road, you mean in the area of labor and employment law?
Yeah.
Well, one of the, you know, you'll see from the client advisor that there's a Fair Pay Act out there. We expect that to be an area for all cities and towns to be concerned about down the line, because what you will see with that, and we've already seen it in some respects, is that you'll have a case. There hasn't been a lot of cases yet, but you'll have cases that'll come out where based on gender, someone will be saying that they're being paid inequitably. And
this was, for example, in your proposal, this was like the cafeteria workers and custodians.
Correct, yep.
That was the old case. What the legislature has done, that case made it much more difficult to prove those types of cases. The new legislation makes it easier to prove. So one thing all towns want to do is check to make sure that they're not vulnerable to those types of things. Now, there are ways of doing it. You can do an audit of benefits and pay to do it, and that's the way to be prepared for it. And with this talk of comparability, you know, you can do comparability internally and to see how that works. But
that's actually a good idea, because that's one of the ways you can avoid liability if you do a self-evaluation. So even if you are found to be in violation, if you've begun a self-evaluation, that can kind of help mitigate it. So it's so new that it hasn't really played out in terms of what that's going to mean, but it might mean extra time to kind of get everything, all your ducks in a row. So doing a self-evaluation, I think, is something that most cities and towns are should start to do maybe on a regular basis anyways, just to kind of provide that layer of protection for themselves. But the school custodians and the cafeteria workers is an interesting case because it's similar work, similar skill level, but the old case said that they weren't comparable, so they could be paid differently. Under the new standard, it is almost certain that they would be found comparable, and so you would have to pay them the same amount. So that's taking a look to see where are you paying your custodians and your school cafeteria workers. As an example, other clients have police and fire dispatchers, and a lot of times those dispatchers may be female in one department, male in another department. Sometimes the fire dispatchers are represented by the fire unions, and they very aggressively, we talked about fire unions before, but may have set the wages a little bit higher than police dispatchers. So that's an area where clients are seeing some disparity, and they're doing very similar work. It's dispatching, so just because it's different departments. So that's another area to take a look at, but that's something that will certainly be coming down the pipeline.
The other thing is the regionalization of more and more services. You have just one agreement right now, but that's become more and more popular. I know there's discussions about regionalized dispatching. I know decisions haven't been made, but those types of things involve putting together agreements, bargaining with existing employees that will be affected by that. You might know, as we represent the Metacomet Emergency Communication Center, which is a conglomeration of 4 or 5 municipalities in the Franklin area. So we've been involved in that. It was interesting, the number of towns that are around you. You've got a partner now in East Bridgewater. The logical thing, if that works out, would be to go back to East Bridgewater. So we don't have all the towns around here. We didn't avoid having towns around here, but one of the advantages of not having that is that you're not going to have potential conflict, council representing this town where you're trying to do an intermunicipal agreement with them, because that's here, that trend is here, and more, you folks are right on the curve of doing that.
You'll also probably run into employees that have medical marijuana cards, or who are, tested on the job or suspicion that they're under the influence. You'll have to, deal with that in an employment situation. OSHA standards going into effect and how that might impact some of your department. So there's a number of labor issues coming up that you'll probably be faced with in one form or another, even if it's just making yourselves aware of it and doing, taking the steps to revise any policies you have, any practices you have. That's something people don't do very often, is take a look at their policies to make sure that they're updated to reflect changes in the law. And then making sure that employees are aware of those policies. Because it's one thing to have a policy, but if no one has notice of it, it's hard to hold people accountable to it. So taking a regular look at your policies, making sure they're updated, they say what you want them to say, and have procedures in place that you feel are fair and that you can live with. So reviewing, updating those regularly, and then making employees aware of them. That's sometimes something that people don't do often enough, and it can really help.
And when you say policies, that's like, that we're including bylaws?
Personnel policies.
Personnel policies primarily, but it could be bylaws depending on what the issue is, but personnel policies primarily.
Sexual harassment, you're supposed to issue that every year.
Yep.
FMLA, there's new components to that. And social media policy, I know the board has recently updated the social media, the acceptable use policy, those types of things. Once you get them out there, the key is getting to the employees, because I can't tell you how often it is that we get to a town and they say, hey, we think this was violated, and then the person who violated says, I've never seen it.
Right.
So, it's much tougher to make a case. And some of them involve bargaining obligations. If you're going to be checked, anything that affects wages, hours, working conditions is a bargaining obligation. So, those are the types of things. Those are not particularly new issues, but they're an ongoing concern about making sure that your employees are educated as to what your expectations are.
Laura?
Yeah, can I just comment that I think it's a missed opportunity for you to only be sending that newsletter to town administrators. Because when I read them, I said, why the hell aren't we getting these? And then you just said, we're going to town administrators. But although they are your primary contact, a more educated Board of Selectmen makes a better client for you, because, you know,
Yes.
you don't have to bring us up to speed every time we're talking about all of this stuff, so just an FYI on
Well,
that.
is easily done. Sometimes the boards get inundated with so much stuff that it can be, but
People can delete it if it's an email.
I suppose,
Delete it,
yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
not
that's true.
interested.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
I'll be glad to do it. We'll
just,
get you on the
that's
list.
just my
Yeah.
2 cents worth
Yeah.
on that. Just wondering across the 4 of you, how many of you have held elected or appointed positions within a municipal government?
I have not held an elected or appointed.
No, the
position
last,
in municipal government.
he's since retired, Mike Lochran used to be on the school committee, but beyond that,
Okay.
yeah, have not.
Okay. And you said that, I think your proposal said that although you did argue the merits of not going this way, that you would be willing to entertain a flat fee arrangement.
Well, we put it in the fee because it was asked in the proposal.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
and we tried to make an assessment over the last 3 years, because some years are an aberration up, and some years
Yep.
like a bargaining year is an aberration up. So we tried to get, what we propose is that an average of what you spend, and then we suggested do it for a year and see how it works out.
Mhm.
Because you shouldn't be sending us a check for $5,600 for a month, and we did 2 hours work. And on the other hand, if we had to do 50 hours work, we shouldn't be just getting a check. You know, we've never quite seen how that all works out. Someone ends up getting the short end of that.
Yeah, agreed, but it does work out on things, for instance, that proactive training and that sort of like nipping it in the bud before it ever gets to a point where there's a grievance. So those types of trainings where you're helping people to become more sensitive to those bright lines that they unwittingly might step over, and then we get into litigation things. So, you know, I think there's that side of it. I don't think it's necessarily worth $5,600 a
Well,
month.
That's what I was gonna say, you could do that.
Yeah,
you could do
on a
that.
much
No.
less.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is if you get a phone call now or you send an email, okay, and it develops into something more than that, then it's not gonna be covered by a phone call or an email. So our view is, if it turns out to something you have to spend several hours on to do it right, you don't wanna start thinking that it can be drive-by labor council
Right.
representation.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if you have a quiet month, then why should you be writing us a check for that? So we just think the fairest way is, if it's a fair hourly rate, and we think it is, and we spend the hours, then that month pay us, we think it's a value, and pay us that. On the other hand, if it's a month we didn't do anything, we don't expect to be paid.
It's just something we're just sort of entertaining. We don't know
Yeah.
which way we're gonna go on it,
Right,
but
right.
I'd like to just have all of that
Yeah.
on
No,
the
it's
table.
helpful to know, and just to your point about trainings, so trainings, there are a number that we do on a regular basis, not just for MMA and larger crowds, but for clients, so like how to conduct investigations,
Mhm.
harassment, sexual harassment, bulletproof documentation, things like that we've already got kind of those presentations. It would just be a matter of personalizing it to Hanson and then our time to do the presentation. So there are ones
Okay.
that would certainly not be $5,600, right? If you needed one very specific to something that's going on in town that you don't see very many other places, and so we were wholesale creating it, that's where our training might get expensive. But there are ones that we do on a regular basis for clients. The clients just call up and ask, and we go. Sometimes they're annually, we do it. So those are certainly available.
Now, what about, and I know you're a small firm, but I know I deal with, in, you know, my day job, which I actually have, you know, I deal with a fairly large law firm, and we have access, we can get in, and they have webinars that they've pre-recorded, and as a client, you've got access to just kind of peruse and do a little self-tutorial on whatever those webinars are, because I recognize that material might be proprietary, you don't necessarily want everybody stealing, you know, your talking points and all that stuff, but is that something you guys have thought about, or?
It is something that we've thought about. Haven't done yet, but it is something that we've thought about. Tim Norris and I have talked about that for a few of the trainings that we've done on a regular basis, and that it would just make sense to do that. We've also talked about if a client was to host it, at their town hall or in a conference or a function room, and then we invited some other area towns to it that the client that did the hosting could, get the benefit of the training for free, that sort of thing, and then have others. So we've talked about a number of different ways to expand the trainings, because it is so important for people, but we haven't gotten there yet, but it is on
Okay, it's good to
on
know
the to-do list.
the ball's in play.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
And sometimes we have, as Leo mentioned, when we do the trainings at MMA and other places, and we have PowerPoints that we've prepared for those, we would make those available to our clients, so we could send you the PowerPoint that you could walk through, and then you wouldn't get the benefit of the verbal part of it, but if you had questions, you could always
Yeah.
email us the questions about the presentation, so any of those would be available
Okay, that's
to
great.
clients as well.
Thank you, that's all. I have.
Absolutely.
So I was gonna ask a question about the $500, because we've been getting a few firms that are, asking with that flat fee, but it's interesting that you said that you think that actually could possibly create even more or additional.
Well, you gotta
Can
look,
you elaborate a little
you
on
gotta
that?
look at what it covers first, and again, we haven't done this, and we don't know the specifics of those that offer it, but when we've seen this advertised, they're talking about, we'll give you a phone call or an email, okay, and you don't have, but then if you look at the fine print is really, once that's done, everything from then on is billable. What we do is not that much different. It's a question of, so you're talking about a 10 or 15-minute phone call. Once it translates into a case, you're being billed at an hourly rate just like
That's true.
everyone else. So it's a little bit misleading.
So that's just saying that
Right.
addition wouldn't be covered under that
No,
500?
it's not. It's not. They're not gonna, once they have to start
Okay.
writing more extensive stuff.
Research something.
You get a
or
drive-by
review
for the
something.
500.
You
Right.
can, right, you can
Yeah.
call in and say like, oh, does this fall under FMLA, or does that, and so if the answer is a quick yes or no, then that's fine, but if it's, all right, I need you to send me the doctor's note that came in, the employee's statement, this sort of thing, and I have to
Right.
review that and then research something, at least as we've seen it advertised, that.
It's interesting, because I feel like for labor, the drive-by really doesn't work well, but for some of the municipal stuff, there may be those sanity
If you had
checks
that
that are
quick
helpful.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because every person is different.
Yeah.
Every person's situation is different. So you can give a general, this is what it might look like, but you do need to ask for more information about what is the specific about what's going on.
Yeah.
And the other way, Kenny, was that if it said, we want you, the department heads, to have free reign to call us. So, some of those calls would not have been made, but for the fact that you get a free call. Now you get a free call and it turns into a matter that might have been resolved at the local level. Now you get a case file. Once you get a case file, now you're back to the hourly rate. And so most places say, we don't want you to just pick up the phone call. We want you to go to the town administrator and say, let's talk about this and see whether we already
Yeah,
have the
yeah,
answer.
Mike needs to be in the loop on all
Oh, yeah.
personnel
Yeah,
things.
I agree
so,
with that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right, and that's the benefit too. Even if it is something that has to go to Labor Council, the town administrator should know what is possibly out there brewing.
Right.
Whether, even if it's gonna be a quick thing that ultimately gets resolved, they should know in the different departments. They don't have to be sitting on the phone every single moment.
Now, I'm glad you
Saying
explained that,
everything.
because a couple of them said that, and I'm looking going, is this helpful and trying
It's
to
just
look
too
at?
easy. All of a sudden, who's doing your job? You or Labor Council?
And it's just important to hear it verbalized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, good point. Good, any more questions? Okay,
Well, we appreciate it. You give us a lot of time and hope we continue to get before the Board of Selectmen other than tonight.
okay,
Thanks.
Thanks a lot.
thank you.
Very nice meeting you.
You also?
Nice meeting you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice meeting you too. Thank you.
See you, thanks.
Nice meeting you.
See you too.
Thanks, Leo.
All right, Laura, thank you.
Good to see you.
Wes, thank you.
Leo?
Okay, take care.
Okay, let's see if we can get through this in a couple of minutes here.
Fee waiver.
Okay, request fee waiver, Hanson Fire Department, breakfast with Santa, Saturday, December 8th.
So moved.
Second.
But can I just ask a question? I really felt bad that they have to pay the $120 for the caretaker stuff.
It's a donation. They wish to pay it.
They did, okay, all right, fine.
It
'cause-
probably comes from the union anyways.
Okay, that's fine, okay. So it was made and seconded. Sorry, I
Motion's
didn't
been
mean to
made and, no,
derail
that's
us.
okay, motion made and seconded, all those in favor? 5-0. Okay, Hanson Community Christmas.
So moved.
Sort
Zero.
and distribute gifts Wednesday, Thursday, December 12th and 13th.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? 5-0.
And I'd just like to say, keep up the good work. That's a lot of hard work Jenna and her team does, and congrats to you guys.
Yeah, good.
I'll send it to you.
Oh.
Yes, do,
Yes.
Mike, why don't you, why don't you just go over briefly what you and I discussed in Darrell this
I informed the Board
morning?
of Selectmen, I hope you all got the email.
Yes.
And I also checked with town council, current town council, and, you know, aside from the fact she's current town council, they came before us, there really is no conflict in advising us this way. You've concluded your interviews. What I've requested the Board of Selectmen do is by the 26th of November, which is next Monday, that you send me the 2 top firms that you'd like to see again, not to rank them, just tell me the 2 top firms you'd like to see, General Counsel and Labor Counsel. And you know, as we've seen, three firms have offered to do both. You don't necessarily have to pick, you know, one or the other. If there's one firm here that you're comfortable with, that you're only interested in them doing General Counsel, let me know that, or vice versa. And what I will do is I will tally up those results, and on the at the next meeting on the 27th, I will make a public announcement that these are the 2 finalists, as it were, and we will bring them in for a second round of interviews on the 11th of December. Your next meeting is the 18th because we run into the holidays, so we'll actually have back-to-back meetings. And on the 18th is, unless the board wishes more time, which obviously the board can do whatever it wants, after the 11th, the way that I have it lined up right now is that I would bring to the board, I would ask the board for a vote on the 18th to move forward on both accounts.
So do we feel like we need to interview them again?
We'll find out.
Yeah, once we get there, we can make that decision.
Okay.
But right now, we'll assume that we
Well,
do.
it's you've got 5 people in front of you. This is a major decision.
It is a major decision.
It's a major
Yeah.
decision. And I strongly advise the Board of Selectmen to choose 2, and again, this is something the chairman and I discussed, choose 2 and have them back again for a second round.
But then, as a group, we don't get to discuss at all what we think, or who we think.
Yeah. Where are we discussing?
We
like,
got this
well,
top
Jim,
secret
good point,
vote.
But I thought this. And,
We got this
yeah.
top secret vote,
Right.
and then we come back on the 8th, or on the 11th, with the 2 finalists for each position. When do we as a
You
group?
can have the discussion on the 18th.
As you talking about,
Yeah, as you
Was
deliver.
that 2?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll have that public.
On the 18th, as you're deliberating who you
Okay.
want
Because
to.
I want to hear why
Who you wanna
people,
vote?
because maybe I missed something or somebody
Yeah,
thought
again.
of something I didn't, you know.
Yeah, and that would be on the 18th.
Well,
Okay.
I think.
It wouldn't be, you know, I wouldn't just say, hey, okay, what do you want to do? That's a
I don't think it makes sense to do that with the
Long-ranging
5. We'd be here
discussion.
all night.
Right.
I think
But
we
yeah,
bringing it down
that's-
because we all may have a lot of the same ideas, and then,
Although
know.
we
But
won't be
there-
weaning it
there
down
comes
too
a
far
point
if
where
we
you
each
need-
pick 2 for each.
there comes a point where you need to narrow.
you really be surprised.
You know,
Talk to
it's,
4.
I don't want to say it's unwieldy with 5, but it comes a point where you need to narrow it down to a group that's wieldy
right.
Yeah.
and have that discussion. And again, we'll announce who those finalists are on when did I say, on the 27th. So, you know, it won't be secret. It'll be made. That's why I want to have the gap of time where it's publicly announced, these are them.
Right.
And, you know, and then it sits for a week and a half until your next meeting, in which you speak to the 2, you know, you have another interview with the 2
That's
finalists,
right.
and you've got a little more time to mull it over individually,
Yeah.
and then you come back on the 18th, and you have that discussion amongst each other. And I'll tell you this much too, you're not married to the 18th. Now, on the 18th, if this board can't come to a decision,
Right.
if they're uncomfortable, if there's not a majority,
Right.
we
Like you
can
said, it's a
revisit,
big-
we
it's a
can
big
revisit
decision.
the way we're doing
Well,
it.
for instance, we may want you to check references.
Yeah.
Which I'm
Yeah.
doing already. I'm doing it on all 5.
Yeah.
No, that's absolutely right.
And-
check references on the
And I-
final
and I
two.
ha- and-
We don't want
and
to check
I've been
references on
doing that-
5.
No.
you
I've been
know?
doing that, you know, all along. Anyways,
Yeah.
I'm
Laura brought up a
compiling,
good point. When we get down to the 2, we absolutely gonna want to check references.
and again, I've already been doing that on all 5.
Okay.
But we're going to want to hear like specific feedback that you got from the references.
Go ahead, Matt, and Jim.
All right, so I have a problem with sending Mike a vote, email of like who we want, because I agree with you. I think we should have a group discussion
Yes,
about all 5 of them, with
Yep.
all 5 of us here.
I like that.
Because we all come from different expertise.
Yep.
You guys have been on the board longer than I have, or Wes has, and I think your insight would be really valuable to my vote. And then, where's my, and then just open government. You know what I mean? I know there's been times here in the town of Hanson where we have a big pool of applicants, and then, we only have these 3 or
Yeah.
these 2 out of this whole group, and the whole board doesn't.
And it's mysterious how that happened.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'd much rather be open, especially with legal counsel. As we all just said, this is a big decision.
Exactly.
And I'd much rather be open
And we can
and
do it that way,
transparent.
it's just the process is gonna take longer.
That's
Yeah.
okay.
That's
Well,
not
as you said,
something-
it's okay if we want to take
something-
more time. But I think we need to be open and transparent with this.
I'm not sure it will take all that
it's-
much longer, but, you know, I'm wondering, Mike, we had talked about, and I know we've gone a whole different path, but we had talked about at one time having like a rubric, like a checklist of like, so that we know that we're comparing apples to apples, like size of, and I know you've given it to us in these sheets, but I'm wondering, is there some way you can put it in like a little?
I really didn't see one. I mean, I know Matt brought that up quite some time ago,
Yeah.
and I took a very hard look at it.
Yeah.
And I didn't see any other way to put it other than what I've given to you as a breakdown.
And
Because in all honesty, they're all comparable. There really isn't, this one hasn't done this and this
And
one
then
hasn't
how do
done
we
that.
vote on them too? We
All
have a
5
public
of them,
discussion.
all 5 of them are highly qualified firms. The only differences between those firms are outlined in those sheets that I've given you, and it just has to do with how many people work for that firm, you know, the years of business, and the amount of municipalities they represent. Other than that, they're all completely qualified. It's really, and again, I looked at it quite some time. It really was an exercise that I didn't think was going to result in anything other than a sheet of paper that says, hey, guess what? On all these 7 different things, they're all the same. They are.
All right, so you think they're very, okay.
I think what I've done is summarizes what you need to know at this point in terms of a rubric or in terms of a comparison. The only differences again are the towns they represent, the amount of towns, the amount of people that they have in their firm, and the amount of years they've been in business. They're all eminently qualified. As I think I've stated to all of you individually at one point, I have experience with all of these firms. As it turns out, the only firm that I was kind of on the fence about whether I knew or not, I just had a conversation with a gentleman, and he took over a town that I had just left, and I came to the realization that I am fully aware of what their firm is doing. So I'm comfortable with them as well.
and
So from
budget.
my point of view, I'm comfortable with all 5 of these firms and their professionality and their abilities.
And with this discussion, this is going to be in an open meeting and not in
No.
executive
No,
session.
none of this
go
can be done in
executive
executive session.
Okay.
None of this falls under any of that.
But you were gonna have to figure out how you're gonna vote, I mean, there's a lot more to it.
And then I'll go back and I'll
As far as
redefine what
narrowing
I've
down.
suggested to the board. And again, this is just was a conversation between the chairman and myself in terms of trying to move this process forward. I know it's been out there for quite some time, and I know the board wants to move forward on it. That was the
Well,
quickest and
yeah.
easiest way that I thought we could get to some sort of conclusion, again, vetted through town council, that everything was above board, nothing was being done in terms of secrecy, nothing was done in terms of non-transparency.
No, I
However,
get,
if
like,
the board wishes to go in a different direction,
Well,
the board can give me that, and again, I'm fine with however you want to do
Good,
it.
Jim
Matt,
first.
I just wanted to say that one of Matt's concern was he was looking for insight from possibly the other board members. He would get that insight from the votes that the other board members make on their top 2. Matt might have the same 2. He might have different 2. He might have 1 and 1. But I think Matt's insight would come from that.
From the discussion.
Right.
No, from the vote to narrow it down to 2 firms on each to get them to come
But
back for a
Matt,
second
you're
interview.
saying you want that in a more transparent, open discussion, conversational kind of
Okay.
a thing, to benefit from like a conversation, instead of just looking at the, like, because honestly, the way I think, I know that the way you guys have outlined it is totally permissible. I 100% agree it's permissible. But I think to be responsive to what Matt's saying,
I think we could just as easily form those opinions in our mind, who our top two are, come and make a pitch for who we think the top two are, and then just have a conversation. And I may say to Matt, you know what, I didn't even hear them say that. Thank you for pointing that out. Or, you know what, Jim, I didn't know that was the situation with that. So I think that might be actually, although it sounds like it's more laborious, I actually think it may be more efficient, and it definitely is more transparent.
Well, it certainly is, but I would say that my concern is, and if the board's comfortable with this, again, everything is fine with me. It's what the board decides. I only offer, suggestions and potential solutions to get through things. But my concern is that if there is a freewheeling conversation about 5 different firms between the 5 members, that we're going to end up, or the board's going to end up in loggerheads of, we're 2, 2, and 1, 1, 2, and 3, and it just. I see a lack of efficiency in that.
We could end up that way even with the.
So me and Mike discussed this in length. I mean, we started last week, but this morning, literally at 7 times you call me, 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
On how we could do this the best way. Like 6 years ago, I was the chairman of the police chief search committee. We started off with 49 members. Well, we didn't bring 49 members to the board of selectmen. We narrowed it down to the best possible 2, and we brought those to the Board of Selectmen, had them interviewed. I don't know that it makes sense taking all 5 if all of us have the same opinion about 1, 2, or 3. When we can narrow it down, then have the deep discussion about those 1 or 2. And
I'm
Jay,
fine either way, but
Jay
I
said there's no.
I'm fine either way, but I hear what Matt's saying, and I try to put myself in the shoes of the average citizen who's going to want to know how the hell the sausage is made on this one.
Okay, well that's fine. So then Mike comes and says, the way forward, because if not, it's going to be a cluster. Sitting there talking about 5 firms, like I said, how do you vote? And I don't know, just my opinion.
I kind of, the way I sort of visualized it, I know it could get overly complicated, but is it possible that you could just ask us to write our pros and cons for each one, and we just go, boom, number 1, pros and cons, boom, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, let's go to the vote. Does somebody want to make a motion on Labor Council? Does somebody want to make a motion on general? You think that's going to jump the tracks and go crazy?
I don't know that's a good idea. Now we're motioning which ones, and before you even get a chance to listen to the other one, what if the first 2 get motioned in, and your one you like is a 5th one, and now you already got 2 spots that are taken?
Okay. I don't know.
Right?
Matt, yeah.
I think
What does Wes think?
Go ahead, Wes. We need to hear your 20%.
Well, possibly, I'm just trying to think, okay, how do we compromise this? I mean, I'm all for efficiency. I'm all for transparency. And I do think, Matt represents a new generation who, nationwide, are demanding transparency in government and not necessarily getting it. Well, not getting it. Well, I don't know. What we might consider then, we'll go right down the row. I would volunteer to start at the next meeting and say, these are my 2 recommendations, and here is why. And I just give my 2 recommendations and give my points. Then the next 4, you could be going, okay, did I think about that? Is that a point? Do I can't? No, he's wrong. That's right. Then Laura gives her 2. Meanwhile, Mike and Mary are tabulating, just as they would do if we sent it in writing. And they say, all right, there's 2, all right. Got it. And we're moving toward, by the time we're through with Matt, we have, okay, have we got 2 generals? Have we got 2 laborers?
That kind of gets you to the same point.
It gets you to the same point, and it's open. Everyone would know why I picked the 2 that I picked, why Laura picked the 2.
Yeah.
I'm just willing to say, I'll go first, and then it's like, I'm done.
But the only problem I have with that was, you go first, it gets down to my turn. Laura had already mentioned this when she said, oh yeah, Matt, you're right, I didn't know they did that. And then, oh yeah, Jim, you said that about this. Now you want to change yours.
I'm saying, I will give up my right to change at that point. I'll say, here's my 2.
Then I want to sit at the end of the table, right over there at the corner.
And you want to?
So that I give up my right to change.
I don't think,
What if we did this? And I like where you're going with it. And again, it's whatever the board really wants to do. What if you send me your 2 top choices
And you disclose them.
and I disclose them? And each member can describe, they can explain why that was their 2 top choices, but those are the 2 top choices at that point.
And never did we suggest not
No,
tell anybody.
no.
No, I know that
You
you
know?
guys aren't doing this in the interest of
Yeah.
not disclosing it, but I just like the idea of it being a more open, transparent conversation.
And I must admit, my wife will want to hear everyone's reasons right down the line for why they picked the 2 they did, and she would like to hear them spoken out loud, verbalized.
But I think that might be.
That's fine.
That might be the
That's fine.
answer. You send me your 2, and we talk about those 2. I say, well, now it's three people want this, blah, 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 and this is, they need to defend, or you talk about why you made your decision.
But what's the point of sending you the 2 if we're gonna just talk about it here anyway? I don't understand like how much efficiency that adds. I'm just asking the
Because then
question.
that's the 2.
Okay.
Well, like I said, I mean, you know what, I'm just gonna listen to the board.
No, so here's what we're gonna do.
No, and I'm not trying to be flippant.
Here's what we're gonna do.
But
We're gonna do.
This is really your decision.
Right.
I placed something before you that
So
I
I'm gonna make
thought
it's
might
at
work.
9:30, I'm gonna make an
But-
educated call. We're gonna do exactly what Mr. Bluff said.
Yeah.
Okay?
And we can, you know what, we could change the order right now. I can go first.
Yeah, no, that doesn't matter.
If Jim
I'm fine
wants
with
to
it.
go second, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
That's
the order
fine.
doesn't matter. However you guys wanna go, it's fine. Yes.
Mr. Chair, I just motion to have a general discussion at the next meeting, and who knows, we may all be on the same page of who we like, who we don't like. I don't think it's responsible for us to come to a meeting and say, I give up my vote. I give up my right to change. Because the whole point of having an open meeting is for the public to see how we make up our mind and to see us evolve our educated choice of who we like to be. This is a very
Right.
I second that motion.
No, that's fine, but I don't want it to be a 2-night thing where we're going back and forth and going on and on. There has to be limits. I'm fine with the open discussion, but I'm gonna cut it down into a certain time.
That's
Because
fine.
we have to move on.
And I need a better definition.
As far as the votes
Well-
and who goes who, that doesn't matter to me, however you guys wanna go. That doesn't matter to me.
Matt has moved and Laura has seconded.
But again, just explain to me exactly.
Sure,
Yeah,
we're
what's-
going to come to the next meeting. We're all probably going to do our homework of who we want to be our legal counsel. We're going to talk about those reasons, and then we're just going to have a group consensus. All right, there it is, done. I think that's fair enough, and that's why we're elected here. We're not elected to come and just go,
Well,
this
we
is
can't have
it.
a group consensus, we're gonna have to vote, that's a.
Yeah, there's
Well,
gotta be some
or just a
rhyme and reason
vote.
to it.
How about just a vote for legal
And there will be
reasons?
2 votes.
Yeah,
Of who we're gonna bring back.
yeah, you're gonna
That's
bring
what
back,
we're-
you're gonna bring
That's what
back.
we're discussing the
Yeah.
next meeting.
Right.
It's not even the final decision.
Like I
of who
said,
we're
I have a
bringing
problem with this,
back.
It's
we're
not
not
the
gonna
final
sit here for
decision.
3 hours and
Right.
discuss the 3 that we're not, it's just.
And
you know,
again,
give
it's,
us a 2
I just wanna-
Why you like
wanna
your guy, why you like the other
make sure
guy,
this-
same thing with you, right
That's why
down the
you've got
line.
the gavel.
Yeah.
Gavel it in.
That's all, I'm fine with it.
All right, I move the vote.
So the
Moved and
motion's been
seconded.
made and seconded, all those in favor? 5-0, did you get that, Mike?
I will get it, yeah.
I'm looking for a motion to adjourn,
So moved.
Okay.
second by
Oh, you call it, whatever.
Mr. Hickey.
I see
All
how
those
it
in
is.
favor?
Aye.
5-0.
Do we do everything?
Good night.
Yeah, we got the two.